My husband signed papers giving him $1.6 million in assets at 9 a.m. on Thursday, April 17th. By 9:15 a.m., he realized those same assets came with $1.9 million in debt, and the man who'd been hiding it from me for 3 years had just legally made it all his problem. $1,900,000. That number sat in the center of everything, heavier than the courthouse walls, heavier than the final hearing stamped on the calendar. Sign today or keep hemorrhaging attorney fees until we were both wrecked and Tyler with us. So I let Vincent win because losing was cheaper than letting my son drown. I held the settlement packet in both hands. It was thick, stapled, and clean, like something that could slice you if you gripped it wrong. Vincent didn't see the blade tucked inside it yet. He sat at our kitchen table like he was interviewing me for a job I'd already been fired from. Same kitchen he'd always shown off to people. Custom cabinets, imported stone, now lit by one overhead bulb that made everything look colder than it was. His phone lay face down beside his coffee mug, right by the edge. The case had left a shallow dent in the wood, like the table had learned the outline of his secrets.
I want the house, the cars, the company, everything, he said, calm the way men get calm when they think they're untouchable. You can keep Tyler. He said my son's name the way you say old couch, a thing you don't want to move. In front of him, the division of our life was a handwritten list, sloppy and arrogant. Marital home, Mercer Development, LLC, the Escalade, the Porsche, the Range Rover. My stomach tightened because the list was both lie and truth at the same time. He thought he was collecting trophies. He was collecting anchors. I reached for my water glass because my hands wouldn't stop trembling. Vincent took the motion as proof he still had me trained. He leaned back and gave me that look, the one that used to make me apologize even when he was the one bleeding me. So you'll take all of it? I asked, like I was slow, like I hadn't been staring at numbers in the dark for years. His mouth pulled into a half smirk. Alexis, you're a bookkeeper. You're not a builder. You wouldn't even know what to do with any of this. He tapped the tabletop 3 times, exactly 3. A metronome. A countdown. Then he dropped the part meant to finish me. Brittney's moving in. Soon.
So, start packing whatever personal things you think are yours. Behind him, stuck under a magnet shaped like an apple, Tyler's kindergarten art, was the sage green paint swatch I'd picked last spring. It had been sitting there for months, waiting for a weekend we never got. Vincent didn't notice it. He never noticed the small things, which meant he never noticed the big things. He slid a draft settlement across the table. Henderson in Price letterhead. Crisp edges. Professional cruelty. I let my eyes go dull on purpose. Okay, I breathed. And while he watched me fold, I kept doing the math I'd been doing since the first time his empire blinked wrong. Because 3 years ago, I found the receipt that proved Vincent wasn't rich. He was just loud. And the minute I saw it, I started building the only thing he couldn't take. It was 3 a.m. when I found the first crack, because that's when Vincent's performance finally shut off. The house was dark except for my laptop glow on the kitchen island, Tyler's science project, cardboard, solar system, cheap masking tape, uneven planets, hung over the edge like it might fall any second. The air smelled like dishwasher detergent and the lemon candle I lit when my nerves got too sharp. I was reconciling Mercer development the way I always did, line by line, numb, precise. Vincent liked to say I enjoyed it, like I was sorting craft beads, instead of tracking whether our life was sinking. Then a transfer posted that didn't belong. $18,450 to an account I didn't recognize. No description, just blank space where an explanation should have been. My cursor hovered. My grip tightened on the trackpad. A second transfer followed, $22,000. Then a payment to a lender we didn't use. One click turned into 5. 5 turned into a cold pressure behind my eyes. The refrigerator hummed, steady and indifferent, like it didn't care what I was about to learn. I pulled open the drawer under the phone charger, the one Vincent thought was safe because it was buried under warranty paperwork and the espresso machine manual he never read. My fingers brushed paper edges, then plastic sleeves, then the folder that felt too thick to be harmless. Statements, dates, lender names that didn't match the stories he told at dinner. I opened the first mortgage statement, then the second, then the third. 3 mortgages on the same house. The first, $610,000 remaining. The second, $330,000. The third, $160,000. My pen barely worked, but it still scratched the total into the margin. $1,100,000. Cold pressure. I pulled up the last appraisal Vincent had bragged about, $850,000. For a moment, the numbers stopped being numbers and turned into weight. Gravity. A hand on the back of my neck. I should have woken him. I should have thrown the paper at his chest and demanded he explain how you triple mortgage a home without your spouse noticing. Instead, I opened my phone and took photos of everything. Account numbers, lender logos, due dates. Close enough that a court could taste the ink. My camera shutter was silent. My pulse wasn't. Down the hall, Tyler's door stayed closed. I listened hard anyway, because fear makes you hear footsteps that aren't there. I emailed the photos to a brand new Gmail account I created in the same breath. Random word, random number, nothing tied to me. Then I kept going, because once you touch the thread, you don't get to pretend the sweater isn't unraveling. I logged into a business line of credit I didn't know existed at that size. $740,000 used. I opened the equipment lease schedule and felt my throat tighten. 3 luxury vehicles. Balloon payments stacked like traps. The Escalade, the Porsche, the Range Rover. On paper, Vincent called them assets. In reality, they were monthly threats with leather seats. The kitchen went so quiet, I could hear the refrigerator click on, then off, like it was trying not to interrupt. I finally understood it wasn't wealth, it was leverage. And if I confronted him, Vincent would do what Vincent always did. Talk faster, smile wider, and sell me a cliff as a staircase. So I shut the laptop. I slid the folder back exactly where it lived, and I started a hunt that lasted 3 years, because waiting was safer than screaming. The next morning, Vincent whistled while he made coffee, like the house wasn't held together with borrowed money. I tested him with a single sentence while Tyler was at school. "Why does the house statement say second position?" I asked, keeping my voice flat, like I didn't already know the answer. Vincent didn't even pause. He didn't blink. That was what scared me. "It's just how the bank labels it," he said.
You worry too much. There was a beat of silence where I could hear the ceiling vent pushing air, warm and stale. I saw 3, I said softly. He laughed, one sharp burst, all confidence. Alexis, come on.
You think you understand financing because you balance QuickBooks? He leaned over my shoulder like he was about to kiss me, and instead he breathed control into my ear. Stop digging, he murmured. It makes you look paranoid. My skin went cold anyway. That afternoon, I opened the pantry and found an envelope shoved behind a cereal box, past due notice, folded twice. Vincent had hidden it like Tyler's toys, like paper couldn't destroy us if it stayed out of sight. I photographed it, too. Evidence doesn't argue back. A week later, Vincent came home with champagne and a grin that demanded applause. I'm expanding, he announced, setting the bottle down hard enough to rattle that sage green paint swatch still trapped under Tyler's Apple magnet. We're going to be in La Maison next month. Real clients. High end. Sounds expensive, I said, watching his pupils, watching for the micro-flinch that always showed up when he lied. It's an investment, he said, like the word fixed math. He kissed my forehead and walked past me as if debt couldn't touch him. That night, he fell asleep with his phone tucked under his pillow like a security blanket. I didn't reach for it, not yet. I chose quieter weapons. I ran a credit report.
I used a neighbor's printer because I refused to leave paper trails in our home office where Vincent could accidentally find them. The printout came out warm, still smelling like toner. And it was worse than the mortgages. Loans I never signed. Credit lines I never heard of. Hard inquiries stacked like someone sprinting from bank to bank before the doors locked. I highlighted totals with a yellow marker until my fingertips stained, like the debt had seeped into my skin. Different lenders, different labels, same truth. $1.9 million. My name sat on enough of it that if Vincent went down, he'd try to drag me with him, smiling the whole way. And then I pictured Tyler, missing front tooth, masking tape planets, the way he counted coins in my purse like money was a language he was forced to learn early. I couldn't let my son inherit Vincent's noise. So I made a plan that tasted like metal in my mouth. I didn't leave. I didn't confront. I prepared. And I waited for Vincent to do what men like him always do when they think they've secured you. Get bored. When my Aunt Sandra died and left me $340,000, people tried to congratulate me like grief came with confetti. The inheritance didn't feel like a blessing.
It felt like a live wire. Vincent noticed money the way sharks notice blood in water. For exactly 48 hours, he turned sweet. He cooked dinner. He bought flowers. He touched my lower back when he walked behind me, performing tenderness like it was a currency he could spend to collect mine. Your aunt would want us to build something with this, he said. Us, like he hadn't already built 3 mortgages behind my back. I nodded and let him talk because nodding was cheaper than arguing. In the grocery store parking lot, sitting in my car with the engine off, I called Nina Castellano on my cell data, not on our Wi-Fi, not from inside a house Vincent had wired with entitlement. Nina picked up on the second ring. This is Nina. My name is Alexis Dunst, I said, and my throat tightened, like my body knew I was crossing a line I couldn't uncross. I need to protect money from my husband without him noticing. A pause, then her voice went clinical. How much? $340, I said, and I have an IRA, $180. So $520, she replied instantly. You have a child. Yes. Tyler, 13.
Nina exhaled like she'd watched this exact scene play out in too many kitchens.
Then you want an irrevocable trust. I want him safe, I said, and the word safe cracked in my mouth, because safe was something my marriage stopped being the night I saw those statements. She gave me instructions like a surgeon. New bank, new email, no shared passwords, no paper mail, no signatures Vincent could mimic, no casual mentions over dinner, no just this once. 2 days later, I sat across from her behind glass walls and sharp corners. No family photos, just certificates, and a desk that looked like it had never held anything soft. She slid the trust paperwork toward me. Once this is transferred, she said, tapping the page, it stops being yours. That's the point. The office felt too cold, like the air conditioning had been turned up to keep emotions from sticking. My hand hovered over the pen, grief rising in a stupid wave, not for Vincent, but for the fact that I was moving money like a criminal inside my own marriage. Then I pictured 3 mortgages. I signed. $340,000 moved. Then my IRA, $180,000, rolled quietly the way Nina arranged it, clean and silent like a door closing. She handed me copies in a plain manila folder with Tyler Trust written in neat block letters. I slid it into the trunk, under the spare tire kit, because safe now meant invisible. At home, Vincent stood by the fridge and asked casually, "So what are we doing with your aunt's money?" I opened the refrigerator and stared at the milk like it might answer for me. "I'm still deciding," I said. His face tightened. "We could pay down the house." My heartbeat hit my ribs hard enough to hurt. "Pay down which mortgage, Vincent?" I kept my expression empty. "Maybe." He mistook my silence for ignorance. He didn't recognize it as restraint. That night, I peeled the sage green paint swatch off the fridge and slid it into my wallet, pressed flat against my cards like a private promise. Then I waited, because I knew exactly what Vincent would do next. He would leave. And when he did, I needed him hungry enough to demand what would finish him. The affair didn't arrive with a confession. It arrived as a new scent on his shirts and a fresh password screen on his phone. It arrived as calls he took in the garage with the engine running, using noise as camouflage. It arrived as a calendar invite that accidentally synced to the family iPad. Brittney Sawyer, 26, gym tan, whitening strips. Laugh pitched like there was always a camera rolling. I didn't throw a vase. I didn't scream. I did what hunters do when they're outmatched in public. I documented. Photos of the calendar invite, screenshots of the new password prompt, receipts he forgot in his pockets. La Maison, $400 Wagyu, $96 cocktails, while at the same table he told Tyler, "We need to be careful with money right now." Tyler heard it. Kids always do. One night, Tyler sat at the kitchen table with homework spread out. Vincent walked in wearing a new watch, heavy gold, face catching the under-cabinet light like a flare. Tyler squinted. "Is that no?" Vincent rolled his wrist, proud. "It's an investment piece." Tyler looked at me, then back at him. "But you said I can't go on the DC trip because it's 220. Vincent's smile stayed put, but his eyes sharpened. "That's different." "Different how?" Tyler pushed, voice small but stubborn. Vincent's jaw flexed. "Go to your room." Tyler shoved his chair back. The legs screeched against tile like a warning. He stormed down the hall. Vincent turned to me like Tyler's honesty was my failure. "Fix Fizz attitude," Vincent said.
I stared at the watch until the shine felt obscene.
When Vincent showered, I went into his office and opened the desk drawer labeled MISC. He used that word like it made evidence disappear. Inside, the purchase slip. $15,000, paid from company funds. I took one photo, then another that caught the serial number, because details were the difference between a suspicion and a fact. Evidence. Always evidence. When Vincent finally demanded divorce, he did it like a business decision, like he was firing me. Brittney moved in exactly the way his mouth had promised, not with boxes and effort, but with a designer tote and a ring light. The first thing she touched was the kitchen, my sage green. I came back to the house to pick up Tyler's jacket and found paint cans on the counter, gray swatches taped to the backsplash, and Brittney standing on a chair, filming herself. "Hey guys," she chirped into her phone. "We're doing a little refresh because the vibe was not it." Vincent laughed like it was charming. I looked at the cabinet doors I'd chosen, the color that made the room feel calm, and felt something click inside me. Not rage. Aim. Brittney dragged a brush through gray paint and pulled it across the cabinet like she was erasing my name. Vincent watched me watching her. "You can take your personal stuff," he said, easy, "but the house stays with me." Then he added, almost as an afterthought, "Also, I canceled your cards. Figure it out." I tested my credit card at the grocery store on purpose, because if you're going to be hit, you might as well make it a record. Declined. I kept the receipt with "transaction denied" printed in bold, and slid it into the same folder as the mortgage photos. Back at the apartment I'd quietly rented under my own name, thin walls, mattress on the floor, I stared at that declined receipt until the paper softened from my fingers. He was trying to starve me into surrender. I let him, because surrender was a costume, and I wore it while I walked Vincent exactly where I needed him. The first crack in my plan didn't come from Vincent. It came from Diane Holloway. Diane worked with me, the kind of woman who brought lemon bars and said, "I just want everyone to be happy." She also collected secrets, like coupons, and she loved the feeling of being needed. At first, it was tiny things Vincent shouldn't have known. Then, one night, when I came by to grab Tyler's winter coat, Vincent leaned against the doorway and said, too casual, "How's your little lawyer friend?" My throat turned to ice. I'd never said Nina's name around him, never written it where he could find it, never left a card. Vincent added, savoring it. I kept my face smooth. "A lot of lawyers are named Nina." He pushed off the wall and stepped closer. He smelled like cologne and entitlement. "Don't play dumb," he said. "I know you're hiding money." I shrugged. "Sloppy on purpose." "What money? You canceled my cards." Vincent watched my eyes, hunting for panic. When I didn't give him any, he backed off a fraction, but the damage was done. Someone was feeding him. So I set a trap where only a leak could spring it. At work, I cornered Diane by the copy machine. I kept my voice low, embarrassed, like I was confessing a weakness. "I'm thinking of asking for half of Mercer Development," I whispered. "Maybe $300,000. Nina says it's possible." Diane's face did sympathy the way actors do it, fast and practiced. Her eyes, though, lit up. "Oh, honey," she breathed. "Please don't tell anyone," I said, and made my voice shake just enough to sell it.
"Please." She pressed a hand to her chest. "Of course not." That evening, my phone buzzed with Vincent's text. "You're not getting $300K. Don't embarrass yourself." I stared at the screen until the letters blurred because the confirmation hit like a clean punch. Gotcha.
The next morning, I brought Diane coffee and smiled like she'd saved my life. "Thanks for listening," I told her. "I don't know what I'd do without you." Relief softened her face. She thought she was a good person. Now that I knew where the pipe was, I could pour whatever I wanted into it. I started feeding Diane plans like breadcrumbs. One day, in the break room, I sighed and said, "I might ask for the Escalade so Tyler has a safe car." Diane gasped, "That's reasonable." That night, Vincent called, voice sharp enough to cut. "You're not taking my Escalade," he snapped. I set my phone on the counter, opened the recording app Nina had told me to download, and kept my voice small. "Okay," I whispered. "I won't." He heard fear. I was saving audio. The recording filed itself into my folder beside the declined receipt, beside the watch slip, beside the mortgage photos. I kept my mouth closed and my eyes open. Information asymmetry became oxygen.
Vincent was underwater and didn't know it. He thought I was begging for a float. Mediation felt like theater, so Vincent insisted on staging it at Henderson and Price, his favorite firm, his favorite audience. The lobby smelled like expensive air freshener and polished threats. Vincent was already there with Harold Whitfield, his attorney. Gray hair, perfect suit, eyes that moved across documents like they were crime scenes. Brittney came too, because Vincent couldn't resist bringing a witness. She sat close enough to him to look claimed, nails glossy, lips too shiny. Her ring light peeked from her bag like she might film my humiliation for later. Vincent caught me noticing and smiled like he'd already won. Nina arrived 2 minutes after me, calm, carrying a slim black folder. She looked like she belonged in any room designed to intimidate. Harold opened with, "Mr. Mercer is prepared to offer a generous settlement, given the circumstances." Vincent cut in, impatient. "She takes 50 grand and her personal things. That's it." Harold's eyes flicked to Vincent, warning, then back to us. "Mr. Mercer, we should discuss." "No," Vincent snapped. "She didn't build anything." Nina didn't react. Her pen moved like she was taking dictation from a man building his own gallows. I kept my shoulders rounded, hands folded, defeated wife posture polished to a shine.
Nina finally spoke. "My client will accept $50,000, she said, plus her personal effects and a full release from all marital liabilities." Harold's head tilted. "Release from—" Vincent laughed, loud and careless. "Fine, release her. She's not on anything important." Nina's eyes flicked once. Tiny. Confirmation. Harold cleared his throat. "We should conduct a full audit before—" Vincent waved him off like Harold was a waiter interrupting dessert. "No audit. I'm not paying for that." Harold's jaw tightened. "It protects you." Vincent leaned back, draped an arm around Brittney like he was in a club, not a legal negotiation. "I don't need protection. I need this done." Brittney leaned in and whispered something in his ear. Vincent smirked at me. "We're moving on." My stomach twisted. I nodded. "Okay." Nina slid a 1-page offer across the table. Clean and brutal. $50,000 to Alexis Dunst. Personal items to Alexis Dunst. All marital assets to Vincent Mercer. All associated liabilities to Vincent Mercer. Harold read it slowly, and I watched his eyes snag on liabilities, like his brain was trying to stop his client from sprinting into a wall. He looked up. "Mr. Mercer." Vincent snatched the page, like reading was an insult. "I'll sign. She wants out, I want out." Harold tried again, voice controlled.
At minimum, you need a full schedule of debts, and Vincent's face hardened. Harold, stop.
The air in the room shifted. That specific quiet that happens when professionals recognize a man is about to ruin himself and you can't legally tape him to a chair. Harold exhaled through his nose. If you refuse an audit, I will require a waiver stating you declined counsel on that issue. Vincent grinned like it was a dare. Bring it. Nina's foot brushed mine under the table. A small signal. The last safety net was about to be cut. I looked at Vincent with the perfect amount of uncertainty. Vincent, are you sure? He heard it as admiration. I'm sure. Harold printed the waiver. Vincent signed without reading. The pen scratched across paper, and something in me settled. Not joy, not relief, just inevitability clicking into place. When we left, Nina handed me a copy of that waiver in the parking lot. Keep it, she said. This is his spine. I held the page and it felt heavier than a single sheet should. Because it wasn't paper. It was consent. It was hubris made enforceable. The days leading to the hearing were Vincent performing wealth while bleeding behind the curtain.
He took Brittney to La Maison and posted steak and red wine like he was celebrating freedom. I saw the charges in the business accounts I still had access to, because Vincent never imagined I'd use his arrogance against him. $612 dinner, $238 bottle, $96 cocktails. The next morning, Tyler asked for $20 for school supplies, markers, poster board. Vincent didn't lift his eyes from his phone. Not right now. Tyler's face did something small, like a door closing. He didn't argue. He just nodded and went to his room. I sat in my car afterward and cried for 30 seconds because strategy doesn't soothe a kid's humiliation. Then I wiped my face, opened my notes app, and typed. Date. Time. Denial. La Maison receipts. Evidence was how I kept emotion from grabbing the steering wheel. Lorraine Mercer called to deliver her version of reality. You're throwing away 15 years, she said, voice syrupy with superiority. Vincent is a provider. I pictured 3 mortgage statements with my husband's fingerprints all over them. A provider, I repeated. You'll regret being difficult, Lorraine continued. Vincent will make sure you end with nothing. I glanced at the Tyler Trust folder, tucked safely away. $520,000, sealed where Vincent couldn't reach. I'm not being difficult, I said. I'm being careful. Lorraine scoffed. Careful doesn't get you far with a man like Vincent. After I hung up, I drove past the house and saw Brittney's car in the driveway. New, leased, gleaming, another future payment hiding under a coat of shine. Vincent was inside, playing king. I was outside holding the paperwork that proved the throne was built on debt. Closer to the final hearing, he escalated. More dinners, more posts, more friends over, developer circles, men who called him visionary. Tyler told me in pieces, like the words hurt his tongue. They were laughing, he said at my apartment, twisting a water bottle cap until it squeaked. Dad said you were taking your little check and leaving. My chest burned. In front of you? Tyler nodded, eyes on the bottle. Brittney laughed too. I covered Tyler's hand with mine. I know that's something precious, and I'm not going to let it fall into the wrong hands. He swallowed hard. Are we okay? I thought about the trust, the waiver, the stapled disclosure waiting like a hidden blade. We're okay, I said. Not comfort, math.
2 days before Thursday, April 17th, Vincent showed up at my apartment unannounced with a folder and a smile that meant trouble. He stood in the hallway like he still owned the air around me.
"I'm being generous," he said, waving the folder like it was a gift. "Sign now and we can skip court." I kept the chain lock on. I let him see it. "What is it?" I asked. "The final agreement," he said. "Clean, 50 grand, you walk." My pulse jumped, because early offers from Vincent always had hooks. "I'll have Nina review it," I said. Vincent's smile tightened. "Why? You don't trust me?" I almost laughed. The sound tried to climb up my throat. Instead, I tilted my head and let my face soften into wounded. "You've made it hard lately." He leaned closer, voice dropping, private and poisonous. "Don't get cute, Alexis. If you drag this out, I'll bury you in filings until you can't afford groceries." The hallway light buzzed overhead, faint and irritating, like it couldn't stand the tension either. I stared at the folder through the crack in the door and wanted to snatch it, copy it, burn it. Nina's warning echoed. "Don't touch anything he controls unless you can track it." "I'm having Nina review it," I repeated. Vincent exhaled hard. "Fine, but don't add shocked when you end with nothing." He walked away like intimidation was a substitute for leverage. The second his footsteps disappeared, I slid the deadbolt and called Nina.
"He tried to get me to sign early," I said. Nina's tone didn't change. "Good. That means cash is tight." My voice lowered. "What if Harold finally catches the liabilities?" "He already tried to stop him," Nina said. Vincent refused. The waiver shuts the door. "And if Vincent refuses to sign in court?" A beat. Then Nina said, "He won't." "Why are you so sure?" "Because Brittney will be there," Nina replied. "And Vincent doesn't just want a win. He wants an audience." I closed my eyes because I hated that Brittney had become a lever in my life. But levers are levers, and Vincent was predictable when pride was involved. Thursday arrived like a sentence. The courthouse hallway outside courtroom 4B felt too cold. The air smelled faintly like old coffee and paper that had been handled by nervous hands. My palms dampened around my folder, copies of everything: the waiver, the mediation offer, the asset list, and the liability disclosure statement stapled behind it. Pages aligned so perfectly, the staple looked like a deliberate threat. Nina stood beside me, composed, hair pinned back like she was heading into surgery. Across the hall, Vincent arrived in a suit that tried to pretend there wasn't a fire behind it.
Brittney clung to his arm in a tight dress, phone already in her hand. Lorraine followed in pearls, chin lifted like this was a gala. Harold trailed them, face drawn, eyes red at the edges like sleep had stopped working. Vincent spotted me and smirked. "Ready to sign your life away?" I dropped my gaze and kept my voice soft. "Yes." Brittney laughed, loud enough to bounce off the hallway tile. "Good." Harold stepped toward Nina, speaking low and tight. "One last time," he said. "My client is refusing an audit. Your client wants release from liabilities. I want it crystal, on the record." Nina nodded once. "It will be." Harold turned to Vincent and grabbed his attention like a man trying to stop a car with his hands. "Vincent, listen. If you sign as written, you take the liabilities attached to those assets. All of them." Vincent rolled his eyes. "Harold, stop. You're killing the vibe." "I'm trying to save you," he hissed. Brittney leaned into Vincent, stage whispering loud enough for me to hear. "Just sign it. We have brunch." Vincent smiled at her like she was the only person who mattered, then looked at Harold like Harold was a stain. "I'm signing, and I'm not paying for an audit."
"Put the waiver in front of me again. I'll sign it twice." Harold's mouth flattened. He pulled out another copy of the waiver and jabbed the signature line with his pen. Vincent scrawled his name fast, flourish and all, like speed with strength. The ink was still wet when the bailiff opened the courtroom doors. Nina leaned toward me and murmured so softly it barely felt like sound. That was the last net. My fingers tightened around my folder, because now even Harold couldn't rescue Vincent from what Vincent demanded. Courtroom 4B was smaller than I expected, like a classroom where people's lives got graded. The wall clock ticked loud enough to count heartbeats. Benches creaked, papers whispered. Every sound felt amplified, like the room itself was listening. Judge Patricia Holden entered and everyone rose. She sat with the weight of someone who had watched every version of betrayal and still had to pretend it was routine. Crisp robe, flat expression, sharp eyes. Vincent took his seat like he owned the table. Brittney sat behind him, phone angled as if she might record. Lorraine folded her hands like she was waiting for dessert. Tyler wasn't there. I refused to let my son watch his father detonate. Nina arranged our documents in a clean stack.
The liability disclosure statement sat near the top, tabbed. A physical object, inches from my hand, quiet and lethal. Harold set down his papers and rubbed his temple once, like he was trying to erase the headache that had a name. Judge Holden looked from side to side. "We are here for the final hearing in Mercer v. Mercer," she said. "Counsel indicates there is a settlement." Harold stood. "Yes, Your Honor." Nina stood. "Yes, Your Honor." Judge Holden's eyes landed on me. "Ms. Dunst, do you understand the terms you're signing today?" My mouth went dry. The room went too still, like everyone was waiting for the defeated wife to beg. Vincent glanced back at Brittney and smirked, savoring the audience. I felt the crisp paper edges under my fingertips. Proof has a texture. "Yes," I said. "Are you signing voluntarily?" the judge asked. I let my shoulders slope and my eyes look tired. "Yes, Your Honor." Vincent's smile widened, greedy and dumb. Judge Holden nodded once. "Proceed." The clock kept ticking. 9:04. 9:05. Vincent adjusted his cufflinks like he was preparing for a photo, not a contract. I stayed perfectly still because traps don't work if you flinch too early.
Harold handed the signature packet to Vincent first, like Vincent was the star of his own show. Vincent didn't read. He flipped straight to the signature page the way you sign for a package you don't bother to inspect. Judge Holden watched him. "Mr. Mercer, you have reviewed this agreement." "Yes, Your Honor," Vincent said, instantly. The lie came out smoother than the truth ever did. Judge Holden turned to me. "Ms. Dunst, this agreement states you relinquish claim to the marital home, the vehicles, and Mercer Development, LLC, in exchange for $50,000. Is that correct?" Even though those words were bait, they still stung. "Yes," I said. "And you're satisfied with that distribution?" the judge pressed. This was the moment Vincent wanted, the humiliation line, the line he'd repeat to friends later.
I looked directly at him for the first time. He lifted his chin like he dared me. My eyes dropped to the staple in the corner of the packet, the tiny piece of metal holding assets and liabilities together the way our marriage was supposed to hold two people together. I want Vincent to have everything he asked for, I said, loud enough for the room. Brittney made a soft sound, half laugh, half applause. Lorraine's mouth turned up, satisfied. Vincent's eyes shined.
Harold's face tightened, and his gaze flicked toward the stapled pages like he suddenly wished staples weren't so permanent. The bailiff stepped forward with the packet. I signed, Alexis Dunst. Study. Nina slid the next page into place with a fingertip pressed near the tabbed corner where the disclosure sat attached, silent and waiting. Vincent didn't notice the attachment. He was already tasting brunch. Signatures went down, ink dried, paper became law. The door clicked shut. Harold reached for the packet to submit it, and his eyes snagged on the tab. He flipped the page. Then another. His lips pressed into a thin line so tight they went pale. I watched his pupils move faster, scanning the liability disclosure statement. Lender names, balances, loan types, guarantees. Harold's hand stopped. He looked at Nina like she'd slid a blade under his client's throat. Then he looked at Vincent like Vincent was standing on train tracks. "Mr. Mercer," Harold said, voice low but urgent, "did you review this schedule?" Vincent sighed like a man being inconvenienced. "Harold, not now." Harold rotated the page and pushed it toward him. "Now." Vincent snatched it, irritated, and looked down with the impatience of someone forced to read directions. The room's silence sharpened. The air felt thinner, like it had been sucked out on purpose.
Judge Holden watched without blinking. Brittney leaned forward, suddenly interested. Lorraine's smile faltered. Vincent's eyes moved across the first line. First mortgage, $610,000. Second mortgage, $330,000. Third mortgage, $160,000. His mouth opened, closed, opened again. He flipped the page as if speed could erase math. Business line of credit, $740,000. Construction loan, $410,000. Vehicle lease balloons, $150,000. Harold stood rigid. "Vincent, the audit!" Vincent's face flushed red in slow motion. He looked up at Harold, then at me, and for the first time all morning, he saw me as dangerous. His gaze snapped to the staple, like the staple had betrayed him. Harold's hand twitched toward the packet, like he could undo a signature by touching paper. "Your Honor," Harold started, "I need a moment." Judge Holden lifted a hand. "The agreement has been signed." Harold swallowed. "There appears to be a liability disclosure," Mina said smoothly, "as required." Harold's eyes flashed. "You attached—" "It was attached in the packet provided for signature," Nina replied, calm as a metronome. Harold turned to Vincent, voice slipping toward pleading. "Vincent, I told you to audit. I told you not to waive." Vincent exploded, too loud for the room. "Shut up!" The bailiff shifted closer, a silent threat in uniform. Judge Holden's gaze sharpened. "Mr. Mercer." Harold tried one last time, desperate.
"Your Honor, my client did not meaningfully review." Judge Holden's eyes flicked to the waiver Harold himself had demanded. "Your client signed a waiver confirming he declined an audit against counsel's advice." Harold's shoulders dropped a fraction, like something in him gave up. The ink was already a cage. Vincent stares at the totals at the bottom of the liability disclosure statement,
and I watch his fantasy die on paper. Total liabilities assumed, $1,900,000. Estimated asset value, $1,600,000. Net, negative $300,000. Vincent's throat worked like he was trying to swallow a brick. Brittney whispered, "What is that?" But Vincent didn't even look at her. Lorraine leaned forward, squinting hard, like debt could be disproven by eyesight alone. Vincent shoved up so fast his chair shrieked against the floor. "This is fraud," he snapped, voice cracking on the word. His hand shook as he pointed the paper at me. "She tricked me. She hid this." Judge Holden's expression didn't move. "Mr. Mercer, sit down." Vincent didn't. He whirled on Harold, eyes wild. "You knew about this." Harold looked like he wanted to step out of his own skin. "Vincent, you refused the audit." Vincent swung back toward me. "You're a bookkeeper," he spat, as if my job title was an insult.
"You manipulated the documents." I kept my voice level because he was holding the proof in his own hands. "It's a disclosure," I said, "attached to what you signed." His fingers crumpled the corner. "So you walk away with 50 grand and you get everything you demanded," I finished softly. Brittney's face drained, lipstick suddenly too bright. "Vincent," she hissed, "what does that mean?" Vincent ignored her and turned toward the judge with a sudden, childish hope that authority would rescue him from consequences. "I'm not agreeing to this," he said. "I withdraw my signature." Judge Holden's voice turned to steel. "That is not how contracts work in this courtroom." Vincent's chest heaved. He looked around for an ally. Brittney, Lorraine, Harold, anyone. But every set of eyes kept dropping back to the paper. Numbers don't flinch. And in that second, Vincent finally understood what he'd done. He didn't just lose me. He took his own debt to the altar in front of a judge. He opened his mouth to shout again, and Judge Holden raised her gavel. She didn't let his panic rewrite the record. "Mr. Mercer," Judge Holden said, "precise and controlled. You signed an agreement retaining all marital assets and assuming all associated liabilities. You also signed a waiver declining a financial audit despite counsel's advice."
The court finds the agreement knowing and voluntary. Vincent shook his head hard, like violence could loosen ink. No, she set me up." Harold's voice came out thin. "Vincent, stop." Vincent rounded on him. "You let me sign it." "I told you not to," Harold snapped back, and the sound of his own frustration surprised even him. Vincent spun toward the bench again, desperation turning to rage. "Your Honor, I'm asking for relief. This is unconscionable." Judge Holden's eyes narrowed. Unconscionable would have been forcing Miss Dunst to assume liabilities she did not incur. The disclosure is attached. The language is clear. Nina stood, calm. "Your Honor, my client is prepared for entry of judgment as agreed." Judge Holden nodded once, like she'd been waiting for the adults in the room to speak. "Judgment is entered," she said. "The agreement is final." The gavel cracked down, sharp as a bone break. Vincent lunged forward a step like he could grab the ruling out of the air. "You can't do this, you can't—" The bailiff moved in. "Sir." Brittney grabbed Vincent's arm, suddenly frantic. "Vincent, what did you sign?" Lorraine's mouth opened, then closed, pearls catching the light like punctuation. Judge Holden's voice cut through it.
"Mercer, control yourself, or you will be removed." Vincent turned on Harold, fury looking for somewhere to land. "You're fired!" Harold's face went flat, the way professionals get when the show is over.
"I'm not your employee," he said quietly, "and it's done." Nina stood. I stood with her. I gathered my folder. Edges crisp, tabs neat. The liability disclosure statement, my hidden blade, now lived in the court record where Vincent couldn't pretend it didn't exist. As we walked toward the exit, Vincent's voice rose behind me, breaking into something animal. I didn't turn around, because he finally had everything he asked for. Outside the courtroom, Brittney let go of his arm like it burned. Lorraine stared through him, and Harold walked away without a glance. Money gone, status cracked, relationships snapping in real time. The bailiff told Vincent to lower his voice as people watched, and he clutched $1.9 million of debt like it was a prize he couldn't drop fast enough.